Linda stood at the kitchen counter, absently stirring a pot of pasta. The rhythmic motion was comforting, a small anchor in the monotony of her days. The house was eerily quiet, the only sounds being the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional bubbling of the pasta water. Paul's absence weighed heavily on her, his business trips were becoming more frequent, and their conversations had dwindled to discussions of logistics and bills. The spark that once defined their relationship had dimmed, leaving behind a cold, practical partnership. As she scrolled through her phone, her eyes glazed over until an unexpected notification caught her attention, an invitation to a party at the outskirts of town. She hesitated, her thumb hovering over the screen. The idea of venturing out felt both thrilling and terrifying. Curiosity, however, won out. She needed a break, a chance to escape the mundane reality that her life had become. Arriving at the party, Linda was immediately overwhelmed by the sheer energy of the place. The mansion was sprawling, lights flashing in rhythmic patterns, music thumping so loudly she could feel it in her chest. She felt a thrill, a spark of excitement she hadn't felt in years. Strangers greeted her with open arms, their carefree attitudes infectious. She was pulled into their orbit, feeling a sense of belonging that had been missing for so long. As she explored the house, she encountered a charismatic man named Jack. Their conversation flowed effortlessly, his confident demeanor drawing her in. They shared a dance, the close proximity and intimate atmosphere igniting a desire within her she had long suppressed. Jack introduced Linda to his friends, each one more intriguing than the last. They showered her with attention, making her feel like the center of the universe. She realized how much she had missed this kind of excitement and spontaneity. The night deepened, and the party grew wilder. Linda, now slightly tipsy, was led to a secluded room by Jack. They sat close, talking about their lives. She found a strange comfort in confiding in a stranger, sharing her frustrations about her marriage. Jack listened intently, his gaze never leaving her face. The intimacy of the moment was intoxicating. Jack leaned in and kissed Linda. There was a moment of hesitation, followed by a rush of adrenaline. She kissed him back, the thrill overpowering any lingering doubts. The night blurred as they lost themselves in the moment, the world outside forgotten. As dawn approached, Linda snuck back home, a mix of guilt and exhilaration swirling within her. She slipped into bed, her thoughts racing about what had transpired. She resolved to keep this night a secret, believing it was a one-time escape from her reality. But as she lay there, staring at the ceiling, she knew deep down that something had changed. The thrill of the night lingered, a tantalizing reminder of the life she had once dreamed of but never dared to pursue. The boundaries of her mundane existence had been shattered, leaving her yearning for more. Days passed, and Linda found herself daydreaming about Jack. The vivid memory of their night together invaded her thoughts at the most unexpected times. The mundane routine of her life with Paul now felt suffocating, every chore and conversation a reminder of the passion she craved. She began texting Jack secretly, their conversations becoming more intimate and daring. Each message was a spark, igniting her longing and making her desire for him even more insatiable. Linda's behavior started to change. She became more adventurous, trying new things to recapture the excitement she felt at the party. She wore more daring outfits, experimented with bold makeup, and even changed her hair. Paul noticed these changes but attributed them to a midlife crisis. He remained blissfully unaware of the brewing storm, his trust in Linda unshaken. One evening, Jack invited Linda to another party. She initially resisted, aware of the slippery slope she was on, but eventually succumbed to the temptation. The allure of another night of freedom and passion was too strong. She told Paul she was going out with friends, masking her true intentions behind a practiced smile and a kiss on the cheek. The second party was even wilder than the first. The mansion was alive with a hedonistic energy that was impossible to resist. Linda immersed herself in the atmosphere, indulging in drinks and dancing without restraint. She felt the familiar thrill as she reconnected with Jack, their chemistry undeniable. His touch, his words, everything about him pulled her deeper into a world she both feared and craved. This time, their rendezvous was more intense. Jack pushed Linda's boundaries, introducing her to new experiences that left her breathless and exhilarated. She felt liberated, shedding her inhibitions and embracing the wild side of herself that she never knew existed. Each moment with Jack was a revelation, a discovery of a part of her soul she had long buried. The next morning, Linda was conflicted. The thrill of the night lingered, but so did the guilt. She realized she was crossing a line, yet the thought of stopping seemed impossible. The intoxicating blend of fear and excitement was a dangerous game, and she found herself addicted to the high it provided. Her double life became a perilous balancing act, each lie and secret a potential tipping point. Linda's frequent absences and secretive behavior began to raise Paul's suspicions. He started asking questions, his concern growing with each evasive answer she gave. Linda deflected with practiced ease, her lies becoming more elaborate, but she felt a growing tension, an ever-present fear that her actions were putting her marriage at risk. One night, Paul confronted her directly, his eyes filled with a mix of confusion and hurt. "Is everything okay, Linda? You seem different." Linda forced a smile, her heart pounding. "I'm fine, Paul, just going through some changes, I guess. It's nothing to worry about." But as she said the words, she knew they were hollow. The truth was that everything was far from fine. She was caught in a web of her own making, and each thread she pulled only tightened the trap around her. The thrill of her affair with Jack was undeniable, but so was the looming shadow of its consequences. Linda's friendship with Jack intensified, their secret meetings outside of parties becoming more frequent. It wasn't just the physical connection that drew her to him. They shared dreams, fears, and frustrations in a way she never had with Paul. Jack was a mirror, reflecting back the parts of herself she had long forgotten. With him, she felt seen and understood, a sensation so intoxicating that she couldn't help but crave more. Paul, sensing the growing distance, decided to surprise Linda with a weekend getaway. He hoped it would rekindle their marriage, bring back the spark that had dimmed over the years. Linda, torn between her obligations and her affair, reluctantly agreed. The trip was a stark contrast to her passionate encounters with Jack. It was filled with awkward silences and forced smiles, each moment a reminder of the emotional chasm that had opened between them. During the getaway, Linda's phone buzzed constantly with messages from Jack. Each vibration was a jolt of excitement but also a stab of guilt. Paul's suspicion grew, but he chose not to confront her yet, perhaps fearing what he might discover. Linda felt trapped, her two worlds colliding in a way she couldn't control. The thrill of the affair was laced with a growing sense of dread. Back home, Linda resumed her secret meetings with Jack. The fear of being caught added an edge to their encounters, making them even more intoxicating. She became adept at lying, weaving intricate stories to cover her tracks. Each lie was a thread in a web she could no longer untangle, but the allure of the forbidden was too strong to resist. One day, Linda's best friend, Sarah, noticed the changes in her behavior. Sarah confronted her, and Linda, cornered by the truth, initially denied everything. But the weight of her secrets became too much to bear, and she eventually broke down and confessed. Sarah was shocked but promised to keep Linda's secret, though she warned her about the potential consequences. Linda nodded, but deep down, she knew she was already too far gone. Jack suggested they take a trip together, away from the prying eyes of their town. Linda was tempted, the idea of escaping with him thrilling and dangerous. She devised a plan to tell Paul she had a work conference, masking her true intentions once again. Each lie felt heavier than the last, but she couldn't stop now. The trip with Jack was a whirlwind of passion and excitement. They explored new places, creating memories that felt surreal to Linda. Each moment with Jack was a blend of ecstasy and fear, a reminder of the life she was jeopardizing. The thrill of their affair was a drug, and she was hopelessly addicted. Yet, in the back of her mind, the reality of her marriage loomed over her. Each stolen kiss, each whispered secret, was a step closer to the edge of a cliff she couldn't see the bottom of. Linda knew this couldn't last forever, but the temptation was too great, the pull too strong. The life she was building with Jack felt more real than the one she had with Paul, but the consequences of her actions were closing in, and there was no turning back. Linda returned home from her trip with Jack, the exhilaration of their adventure still fresh in her mind. But as soon as she stepped through the door, she sensed something was off. Paul was in the living room, a contemplative look on his face. He greeted her with a lukewarm smile, his eyes distant. She dismissed it as work stress, but the truth was far more insidious. Paul had been piecing together the lies and inconsistencies, the late nights, the sudden changes in Linda's behavior, the evasive answers. His intuition told him something was terribly wrong, though. He had yet to confront her. Linda tried to settle back into her routine, but she couldn't shake the feeling of unease. Jack continued to text her, but the thrill of their affair had become tainted by guilt and fear. Linda found herself torn between two worlds, each pulling her in opposite directions. The excitement of her secret life was intoxicating, but the reality of her marriage was suffocating. She knew she couldn't keep this up forever, but the thought of losing either Jack or Paul was unbearable. One evening, Paul finally confronted her. He had gone through her phone while she was in the shower, finding the incriminating messages between her and Jack. His face was a mask of betrayal and hurt as he held her phone out to her. "What is this, Linda?" he asked, his voice trembling with anger and pain. Linda's heart dropped. The moment she had been dreading had arrived, and there was no way to escape it. She stammered, trying to find the words to explain, but nothing could justify her actions. The room felt suffocating, the walls closing in on her as Paul's gaze bore into her. "How long, Linda? How long have you been lying to me?" Paul's voice cracked, the pain evident in every word. Tears welled up in Linda's eyes as she admitted the truth. "A few months," she whispered, barely able to meet his eyes. "I'm sorry, Paul. I didn't mean for it to happen." Paul was silent for a moment, processing her confession. He looked away, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. The silence between them was deafening, the weight of her betrayal hanging in the air like a heavy fog. "I trusted you," Paul finally said, his voice thick with emotion. "I gave you everything, and this is how you repay me." Linda couldn't hold back the tears any longer. She tried to reach out to him, but Paul stepped back, his face contorted with hurt and anger. "Don't," he said, his voice cold. "I don't even know who you are anymore." The days that followed were a blur of pain and regret. Linda and Paul barely spoke, their home filled with a tension that was palpable. Linda knew she had shattered their marriage, and she didn't know if it could ever be repaired. She tried to reach out to Paul, but he was distant, his heart closed off to her. The reality of what she had done hit her like a ton of bricks. She had jeopardized the one stable thing in her life for a fleeting thrill, and now she was left with nothing but the wreckage of her choices. Jack reached out to her, but Linda ignored his messages. The affair that had once been so exciting now felt like a burden, a reminder of the destruction she had caused. She couldn't bring herself to see him again, not with the weight of her guilt pressing down on her. The fantasy she had built around their relationship had crumbled, leaving behind nothing but the harsh reality of her betrayal. Linda began to withdraw from everyone, her friends, her family, even herself. She was consumed by guilt, shame, and regret. Each day felt like a punishment, a reminder of the life she had thrown away for a moment of excitement. She wanted to make things right with Paul, but she didn't know if that was even possible. The damage had been done, and she wasn't sure if there was anything left to salvage. As weeks turned into months, Paul remained distant. He threw himself into work, staying late at the office and avoiding any meaningful conversations with Linda. Their marriage was hanging by a thread, and both of them knew it. Linda tried to make amends, but every attempt felt futile. The trust had been broken, and no amount of apologies could fix that. One evening, after months of silence and tension, Paul finally sat down with Linda. The air between them was heavy with unresolved pain and unspoken words. Paul looked at her, his eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and determination. "I don't know if we can ever go back to the way things were," he said, his voice steady but tinged with sorrow. "But I'm willing to try. We owe it to ourselves to at least try." Linda nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. "I want to try too, Paul. I'm so sorry for everything. I know I hurt you, and I'll do whatever it takes to make it right." They agreed to go to couples therapy, a step that was both daunting and necessary. The process was slow and painful, filled with difficult conversations and uncomfortable truths. Linda had to face the reality of her actions and the impact they had on Paul. She had to confront her own insecurities, her need for excitement, and the void she had tried to fill with Jack. Therapy forced her to look inward, to understand why she had made the choices she did. Paul, too, had to confront his own role in the breakdown of their marriage. He realized that he had been distant, emotionally unavailable, and had taken Linda for granted. The affair was a symptom of a deeper problem in their relationship, and both of them had to work on rebuilding the trust and connection they had lost. Months of therapy began to show slow progress. Linda and Paul started to communicate more openly, sharing their feelings and fears in a way they hadn't in years. They rediscovered parts of each other that had been buried under the weight of their routines and unspoken resentments. It wasn't easy, and there were still days of doubt and pain, but they were both committed to the process. Linda made a conscious effort to distance herself from Jack. She deleted his number, blocked him on social media, and focused on rebuilding her marriage. The temptation to reach out to him was still there, but she resisted it, knowing that any contact with him would only derail the progress she and Paul were making. The affair had been a wake-up call, a painful reminder of what she truly valued.